Gray,
Kristen Dumais,
Jamar Tisby,
Russell Moore. Why are you still a Christian?
This is Phil. The last 5 or 6 years have been rough for many thoughtful, faithful Christians. The embrace of Trump and Trumpism, the rise of ethnic nationalism and xenophobia, conspiracy theories and abuse scandals have rocked the church. Many have walked away in disgust. Some have spoken out and paid the price, and yet rather than walking away have remained committed to Christ and His church. We wanted to sit down with a few of those who have cried out like voices in the wilderness, who've been attacked by the church they love and yet still remain. We wanted to ask a simple question. Why are you still a Christian? Russell Moore spent his whole life in the Southern Baptist Convention, ultimately as the head of the influential Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the SBC's public policy arm. But standing against Trump and then advocating for an honest assessment of abuse within the SBC made Moore a pariah among the conservative wing of the convention, ultimately leading to his departure from the ERLC and the SBC. I sat down with Russell Moore to hear his story and find out why, through it all, he's still following Jesus.
This is Phil. I'm here with Russell Moore. I don't know how to introduce Russell. He's been all over the place. He's in the news. He does stuff. He was in the SBC. He ended up leaving the SBC. So he's now what's your official title at CT?
Editor-in-Chief.
Editor-in-Chief of Christianity Today, filling the shoes of Carl Henry. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially because I knew Dr. Henry at the very end of his life.
Really?
He was a very elderly man telling I think very highly of him.
That would be fun. Okay, so let's go back. You were on the show the morning after Donald Trump tweeted about your very dark heart.
Yes.
You remember that? Yeah.
Yes.
And we'd already
nasty man with no heart. Yeah.
Oh, no heart. Nasty man with no heart. Terrible disservice to the Southern Baptists. And that I assume you didn't think at the time that criticizing Trump would turn out to be as big a deal as it turned out to be.
Oh, no, I knew exactly.
You did?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then that's even more crazy. No, I admire that. You also took a stand against abuse in the SBC, and as a result of those two positions became extremely unpopular. So first question is how, looking back on it all, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I attended some Southern Baptist convention and someone was selling Russell Moore piñatas in the corner. Because there's like you. I
actually doubt that.
Really?
Because the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting was always the sanest people, and
okay.
I never left an SBC meeting not feeling encouraged and affirmed and buoyed in every way. So now SBC Executive Committee meeting, that's a different story, but that's a whole different group of people.
Okay, and the Conservative Baptist Network, and other. Yeah. I'm just curious, how have you come to understand the level of hostility that, like you and David French, and you're often kind of roped together because you were in a car once and someone took a picture, and so then they tweet out the picture of you two as examples of the regime or, selling out, currying favor with the elites, that sort of thing. How do you now, and is your whole life really about trying to get the New York Times to like you? Is that really?
No. And David and I are neighbors, and he's a close and dear friend. And no, I mean, and that's, I think that people think that David and I are at Georgetown cocktail parties and that kind of thing when we're really at homeschooling co-ops and
in Tennessee,
sort of thing in Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when everyone started, well, not everyone. Okay, I'm exaggerating. But when bricks started flying at your head and when things were at their ugliest, what did that do to your faith? How did you handle thinking, are these my people? Aren't they my people? why are they burning me in effigy? What did that do to you on the inside?
It didn't do anything to me at the cognitive level, because, as I said, I knew exactly what the result would be, but I felt like I had to say something. Back 2015, when I started doing that, I knew that would be the case, and it was consistent with, I'd been worried about this for a long time, even before we knew what the words were to call it. I talked about it with the Glenn Beck Restoring Honor rally in Washington, and I think that was 2010. And, everything leading up to that didn't do anything at the surface level because I expected it. What it did do was at a deeper kind of level, because my entire life was Southern Baptist embedded. I was always working with people outside the SBC, but that was who I started to say that's who I was. That's who I am. I have a Baptist hymnal right here, and a little statuette of our missionary heroine Lottie Moon over just to the side of me.
Is it a bobblehead? Is it one of your bobbleheads?
No, it's not a bobblehead. Okay. It's just a bronze bust.
Okay.
So that was part of my identity, and so that sense of exile was very hard for that part of me not to hear, "Depart from me, you worker of iniquity, I never knew you," because I had so confused the Southern Baptist voice for the voice of Jesus at that level, even when I knew mentally and in a lot of ways emotionally that wasn't the case.
Did you grow up in an SBC church?
Oh, yeah. I grew up not just in an SBC church, but in an SBC church that had the whole program at a time when, right now, SBC churches are really different. But at the time, you pretty well had the same program in every SBC church. And I was there Sunday school, morning worship, training union, evening worship, youth choir, visitation, prayer meeting, RAs, which was our version of the Boy Scouts, all of that, and every week.
How old were you when you began to see some of the differences within evangelicalism, the Billy Grahams versus the Bob Jones conflicts, some of the internal, neo-evangelical versus fundamentalist conflicts? When did you say, oh, wow, look, there's a whole storyline here?
Well, kind of early on, because we had people that we knew who were independent fundamentalist Baptists for whom we were liberals, because we watch TV, and that sort of thing. And one of the things I noticed really early on was the fact that those were the people, the kids my age, who wanted to do nothing but watch TV when they came to my house. And they were the people that, these were the kids that when I was a really naive, innocent kind of 15-year-old, would tell me jokes that I did not understand and didn't until a embarrassingly long time later. And so I could kind of see you had this really vicious sort of authoritarianism that underneath was breeding a lot of rebellion. So I think I saw that very early on. And I remember one of those kids being whipped with a belt for dancing.
Oh, wow.
Just sort of spontaneously, not like at a dance, just sort of spontaneously dancing.
Just moving rhythmically in the home.
Yeah. And that was not our world at all.
Yeah, because you were a professional ballroom dancer for a while.
No, we didn't dance, but we did do it. We didn't have that kind of. And especially my parents were not authoritarian in any sense. As a matter of fact, I think I probably was the most legalistic and uptight person in the house.
Are you a natural rule follower?
Yeah. I think so.
Me too. Yeah, that makes it hard to rebel because you're just wired against it. It's so much part of your identity to be the good kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, okay, so you're the good kid, but then some people have decided that you're the bad kid.
Yeah.
Were you so confident that you were seeing things clearly that you were just able to shrug that off?
I did with that. I mean, I wasn't able to shrug it off, but I was confident that I was seeing things clearly on that.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, David French and I were just talking last night about if we had said in 2015, 2016, look, this is what's going to happen, and we just had laid out the next few years, everybody would have said that is alarmist and so forth, and I would have thought, that's a little much. So if anything, I downplayed where I saw things going.
So have the last 5 or 6 years, how have they affected your faith? And then secondarily, and maybe these two go together, do you view the church any differently now than you did, 10 years ago?
They say with parenting, what you're trying to do is to give kids manageable crises where you can help them through it and train them for the bigger crises later on. And I think that's exactly what I had, because I went through sort of a spiritual crisis of rethinking everything at 15. And that was really good for me, because I wasn't in new territory with things I had never thought about. I had really thought about this, and a lot of it about things that are directly related to, because I was looking around at race in white Bible Belt Christianity, and at the tying of politics to that in a way that seemed cynical. And I was wondering
when you were 15.
Yeah, when I was 15, I was starting to say maybe that's what this actually is. Maybe this is really about white Southern honor culture and partisan politics, and the Christianity is just a means to that end. And so that's what I explored, and really had to go through that. So later on, I think not only had I been through that, but I'd been a Christian and had been in situations for so long that I was able to withstand it in a way that I don't think I would have been able to, if it had happened a decade earlier.
Okay. Was there an event that precipitated your rethinking at 15?
No, I don't think there was. I think it was a series of events, and I just went into this kind of panic. Because I thought if this isn't true, that has all kinds of implications, and so but I don't think it was one single event.
Okay, and what did you do to resolve that? What was your quest like? Because for me, it was a bunch of Josh McDowell books. Because I was, I'm very intellectually wired. I assume you kind of are too. So when I have doubts, I want answers, and I want evidence that demands a verdict and stuff like that.
Not me, and it's because my problem wasn't intellectual. Instead, for me, it was C.S. Lewis, and it was really not in that moment, but it was having read the Narnia books so many times as a kid that I had all of that in the background, and I recognized C.S. Lewis's name. So I read Mere Christianity, and that sort of led me out into a bunch of other things. And what did it for me with Mere Christianity wasn't the arguments for the fact that Christianity is true, although those are good arguments, but it's just not what my problem was. It was that there was this intangible sort of tone of voice. And I often tell people, I think if I had to sum it up, it's not even in Mere Christianity, it's in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when Lewis just says as this aside, now, of course, you should never go into a wardrobe. There's this taking the child seriously and speaking in a kind of tone of voice that isn't marketing or mobilizing. And that's what I needed to hear. And so that was really, and there were a lot of things after that, but that was the beginning.
Were there any Lewis books that were really key, more key than others, that you revisit occasionally?
Well, I revisit all of them. Pilgrim's Regress is not one that I much like, and I don't like the discarded image. No, I'm sorry. I don't really like Till We Have Faces, although I recognize it's a beautifully done book, and a lot of people, it's their favorite. But the others I revisit all the time.
Okay.
Weight of Glory, the whole...
Space Trilogy?
Set. Yeah. I read the Space Trilogy as a kid, and then I reread the Space Trilogy in Russia, of all places, when my wife and I were adopting our first two kids, and we had to be in Russia for a month. I took the Space Trilogy with me and reread it then, and then a group of us have a book club together, read Paralandra together about 8 months ago. Okay. And every time I was like, I don't even remember this. It's an entirely new sort of experience reading it.
Interesting.
This episode is being sponsored by AG1 by Athletic Greens. Some of you know that my dad is a doctor, and as I get older, he's always telling me to watch my weight and exercise regularly. But in the last few years, he's also been telling me to pay attention to my gut health. He's been persuaded by all the research saying that the biome of good bacteria that lives in our guts is critical to our long-term health. There's just one problem. I hate taking lots of pills and vitamins and supplements. And why do they always have to be so big? That's one of the reasons I was excited to try AG1 by Athletic Greens. AG1 is a foundational nutritional drink with 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food ingredients. I take it first thing in the morning before I've had my tea and before I jump into my morning routine of writing my daily devotional. And I'll be honest, it tasted way better than I expected. I've been doing it for a few weeks now, and I feel great knowing I'm supporting my health and not having to gag down a bunch of giant pills every morning. And that's why I've stuck with it, because AG1 is a super easy daily habit. So, if you're looking for a simpler and cost-effective supplement routine, check out AG1 by Athletic Greens. And right now, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/holypost. That's athleticgreens.com/holypost.
Okay, a couple things. You spend a lot of time, thinking about and writing about various doctrines and church polity, and you're kind of in the weeds of evangelicalism. How do you, when you get into all of that, because sometimes it can get pretty petty in the weeds, with little camps and people on different sides. How do you stay focused on big picture and Jesus when you invest so much time and energy in the weeds?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the weeds. I don't really invest a lot of time in the weeds of sort of social media controversies. As a matter of fact, I'm the last person to know about most of that because I don't read it.
Do you know that you're not a fan of Pilgrim's Progress, and several people took note of that?
Well, yeah. I mean, somebody told me that some people did that, and I mean, who cares? But I don't look at that stuff. So a lot of times there will be those sorts of controversies that come and go, and I'll be completely and blissfully ignorant of them.
I haven't followed your work at CT closely enough, but even when you were working at the ERLC, you're dealing with lots and lots of issues that people have very strong feelings about, and you've got Christians that are lining up in different camps and yelling at each other. How do you stay how do you keep your soul, your heart above the internal arguments to stay focused on Jesus?
Well, I guess it's through. I'm more of a literary sort of guy than I am an issues person. I mean, I have issues that I think through, but I think I'm more of a more poetic than prophetic, I guess. And so a lot of what I pay attention to and listen to feeds into that part of me, which feeds the part of me that was really embedded in the old King James Bible as a kid growing up. Mm-hmm. So I think that's to the degree that I know. I mean, I don't think I probably don't even know.
Okay. Do you have any spiritual practices that have really been helpful when life has been discouraging, or when you're really feeling gloomy about the state of the church?
Well, what helps me is to walk and pray at the same time. And I always hesitate to say that because for a long time I know in my own life when somebody would say, well, this is what I do, I would write it down. Oh, I need to start doing that. And I don't
Tell
think
me
that
what to do.
Yeah, this isn't a prescription for anybody. It's just the way that I work is that walking alone and praying is what helps me. And so I just sort of have to force myself to do that.
Yeah. Is that a daily practice or as you can practice?
I try for it to be a daily practice, yeah. And then I also have I have groups of friends. I have two groups of friends that I trust completely, and that I can talk about things with without worrying about how are they judging this or sorting this through, or especially when you're having to be in a public space, you have to sort of pay attention to every way that your words can be manipulated to attack you with. Right. And these are places where that is not true at all, and that's really been helpful.
Yeah, and do you have a cycle of when you check in with, like you guys talk weekly, or how does that work?
Well, a lot of times, one group of us we live all over the place, and so we'll talk to each other by text, usually some of them daily, and then we'll get together by Zoom. Another group is here in Nashville, and a lot of us are traveling on the road.
Okay,
and so it's. There are times when we're together every week, and then we'll go for long periods of time when we're not.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you to give some advice to someone who's 25 years old. They're looking at the state of the church, and they're thinking, if this is what it is, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Well, there's a quote that Walker Percy gave. I think it was in the interview when he said, he'd interviewed himself with all the questions that he wished people would ask him, and they don't. And one of them was about how can you stay a Christian given the awful state of the church. And he said, the fact that the church has been able to withstand this much hucksterism and fraud and corruption, I forget how he worded it, is a sign of its supernatural origins. The Spirit continues to work with the church in spite of all of that. And I would say, look at the way that Jesus prepared us for all this. There are so many times when Jesus is saying to his disciples, I'm telling you these things ahead of time so that you won't be alarmed when they happen. And he certainly gave nothing like an idealized picture of what the church is. And as a matter of fact, the first extended words that we have from Jesus after his ascension are mostly lambasting letters to 7 churches, the beginning of Revelation, that you think, this really isn't good PR. Because if you're trying to sell, we have this new religion, you probably wouldn't want people hearing a rebuke of a church for having grown cold.
You're putting your dirty laundry in the sales brochure.
Right. And so Jesus didn't give us this idealized picture of the church. He told us the truth. He told us honestly about that. And the fundamental question is him. And Will Willimon said one time, I was really struck by this because he was talking about kind of ultra-liberal Protestantism in his world, and he said they think the Easter women were lying. And I kind of chuckled at that and thought, that's it. Were the Easter women lying? Mm-hmm. And if they were, then that's one thing. But if they were telling the truth, then that's something else. And I think they were telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we can? Because you can easily focus on Jesus to the exclusion of the church and just say, it's just me and Jesus. This is just me and Jesus because the church is too messy and people are too messy. And that doesn't seem to be a biblical answer. So.
Yeah. But, this is something I've changed my mind on because I used to often blast me and Jesus Christianity using that Tom T. Hall song to do it until I was working in homeless ministry for a group of homeless and recovering addicts. And it was one night when the director of the program said, well, it's they choose the hymns that we sing that night. And he said, well, that means it's going to be Me and Jesus by Tom T. Hall. And I laughed. And he said, it will. I should watch. And sure enough, somebody asked for that. And they kind of came alive at that song. And I thought, I'm in this moment of intense communion, singing Me and Jesus. And I realized why that was. And it was because you had people who felt very lonely and very isolated, and nonetheless, Jesus came looking for them. Okay. So what they heard with Me and Jesus is leaving the 99 to find the one.
Right.
Not that, I don't need a church at all. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you can't reject the church and you can't idealize the church. And so often you have to sort of wonder, well, which problem do I have? Am I sort of the individualistic person who doesn't want to be in communion with others? Or am I more the kind of person who is a herd mentality, hive mind sort of conformist? Mm-hmm. And check yourself on that.
Right, because are you just pulling towards your natural tendencies?
Yeah.
Which that never happens. I never ever do that. I'm an introvert. I think it'll just be me and Jesus this weekend.
Yeah.
What if you met your 15-year-old self? What advice would you give to him, little Russell, that would help him face everything you've faced?
He's smarter than I am.
Okay.
he really is. And what I would want to say to my 15-year-old self is, first of all, don't waste all of this time worrying about the future. I wasted so much time. I've got a Bible that I had when I was a teenager, and I can look at all of the things that I highlighted, and I can almost without exception pinpoint what the anxiety was that was addressing. So I would say that, and then I would say your gut is more accurate than you think, because one of the things that I can see just looking over my life is that my mind was wrong a lot, but my gut rarely was. My intuitions rarely were. And there would often be times when I would say, something's really good here, but I'm not supposed to see something good here, so I silence it. Or something's really crazy or evil here, but I'm not supposed to see it that way, so I silence it and shut it down. And I would say, trust that more.
Yeah, I made some really bad decisions in business in particular by letting a pro and con chart override my gut.
Yeah.
You know, like, or this is a great looking resume. I don't feel great about the interview, but it's a great looking resume.
Yeah. And that's, so every time when I've kind of had a vibe what I would say is you can't make rational decisions on the basis of that.
Right, that's crazy.
And then later I look back and say, well, there was some part of me that really did see what was going on and is trying to alert the rest of me.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think honestly that was, in most cases, a biblically informed intuition that my mind and heart couldn't understand, but that kind of knew, wait, we've seen this story before.
Yeah, do you think it would be different in Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn? He talks about he's escaping with Jim, the escaped slave, and he says it's going against his conscience to help Jim escape because he's someone else's property, and he knows that he's someone else's property, but he's at war with his conscience because his conscience says you're doing the wrong thing because of the culture he grew up in. So do you think growing up in a culture of the Bible, growing up, kind of ingesting the Bible, shaped your conscience in a way that you could kind of trust your gut more?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my home church didn't know how to do children's ministry.
Okay.
So all they knew how to do was teach us the Bible. And that was the best thing that could possibly happen to me. And I think also they took us seriously enough that we didn't have, I'll go to some churches and see these insipid sort of children's sermons where I think, how do these kids sit and listen to this? Because it's so condescending and demeaning, and so obviously really for the adults to look and say how cute are these kids. We never had any of that. They took us seriously as you have a responsibility for the church, and we're preparing you for that. For whatever reason, they knew that, and that was the best thing that could possibly happen.
Okay, so in a nutshell, Russell Moore, why are you still a Christian? Because
I resonate, and I use that language intentionally with the way that Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, that what it means to follow Christ is to hear a voice and to see a light. I resonate with the truth of Christianity, and what I mean by that is I trust Jesus. And so it's a very similar thing to the disciples when Jesus says, come and see, and they say, I don't even know where we're going, but I trust him. And I trust him. And because I trust him, I trust what he trusted. And so I believe the Bible.
And given everything you've seen, do you find reason, what do you see in the church that gives you hope, that makes you hopeful?
Well, you look around and you see what's happening with, one of the things that's just startling to me is when I go onto college campuses or student ministries or these sorts of things, with the kind of sincerity that is present there that wouldn't have been there 10 years ago. 10 years ago, people that age would have maybe had these same questions, but they wouldn't have asked them this way. Okay. And so there's, how do I read the Bible when my attention span is so torn and turned in so many different directions? How do I pray? And there's a genuine sincerity and simplicity of faith that I find invigorating. And it's in those moments that you realize, I was at my most cynical, I think, a day when I just happened to be baptizing my fourth son, Jonah. And I was really dark about the future of the church. And then it just struck me as I was standing there, and to say, here I am. Jesus says you will have no sign but the sign of Jonah. And here I am seeing the gospel go to another generation with my own son named Jonah. And this is happening all over the world with people who are hearing the gospel and hearing it as what it is, good news, and following it. What right do I have to be cynical? And I think that's, I'm often reminded of that. And it seems, in my case anyway, every time that I find myself moving in a cynical direction, there will be somebody like that I'll see and say, oh, wait, this is what it's really about.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Have you found it productive to engage with your critics, or have you had to move away from that?
Well, I will engage with real life critics. Okay. What I don't find useful is engaging with online critics, because usually the people who are online, I mean, first of all, I don't even know that they're there, but also because that tends to be a quarrelsome, craving for controversy kind of person, and I find that unproductive.
Yeah.
But I find myself in a lot of, every day in conversations with good faith, genuine people who see things very differently from me.
And you find those conversations helpful, affirming?
When they're conversations, and what I don't do, and I get invited to do this a lot, is will you come and debate so and so on whatever? Right. And I just say I'm not good at that. Yeah. I'm not the kind of person. I don't enjoy it, and I also am not good at it.
If it's something that they do in colleges as a sport. It might be like, would you come and fence over the doctrine of substitutionary atonement? Like, no, I know what I believe about the doctrine, but I'm not much of a fencer. So, yeah, okay, cool. Well, Russell Moore, I really appreciate you. I remember when you were named the head of the ERLC, and some of the press stories and just the breath of fresh air you were at that time. Because I was a kid of the '80s culture wars, and I've appreciated your thoughtfulness and desire to have a respectful conversation throughout everything, which I think has been astonishing, given how the last 5 years of our lives has gone.
Thank you, Phil.
All right, that was Russell Moore on our little special, Why Are You Still a Christian? Thanks, Russell.
Thank you.
The Holy Post Podcast is a production of Holy Post Media. Production assistance by Mike Strelo. Editing by Area Code Audio. Help us create more thoughtful Christian media by subscribing to Holy Post Plus at holypost.com/plus. Also, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts so more people can discover thoughtful Christian commentary, plus ukulele and occasional butt news. Visit holypost.com for show notes, news stories, Holy Post merchandise, and much more.